Theatre has been a tradition of humanity for more than 2 millennia, and acting, its sister art, almost just as long. It's not an activity exclusive to humans, as plenty of social animals like primates and even canines play pretend during their interaction and childhood development. But among human beings, it's a structured art form, as varied an approach as it is difficult to analyze, a craft that has never ceased to evolve, entice, and divide over the more than 2 millennia following the moment the first actor walked on stage. This series, in turn, will be an exploration of the history of acting, from its origins to our current decade. In this first series, we will focus on the art of theatrical acting, spanning from the dramas of ancient Greece to the post-colonial works of modern theater. It will by no means be a comprehensive history, but rather a series of brief explorations, a journey through the evolution of acting across Europe and North America, with frequent sojourns to the lands beyond the West that have influenced it all the same. Japan, Brazil, and Mali being among them. We'll meet the playwrights, scholars, instructors, rulers, choreographers, and financiers who made and studied spectacles for religion, money, change, or ambition. We'll explore the times they lived in, its conflicts, and how the artists survived during times of hardship. We'll visit the stages they worked on, get to know their audiences, their critics, and their enemies. But above all, we'll be studying the devoted and inventive theatrical professionals who advanced the art of acting, their methods, careers, lifestyles, and how their work has influenced the acting of our current day. With all that said, the year is 2025, and the art of acting as we know it in the West was posited to have first appeared around 534 BC, during a poetry performance in ancient Greece. Poetry in their day was a commonplace term applied to many types of metrical literature. Metrical meaning that the work followed a set rhythm scheme based on the arrangement of stressed and unstressed syllables and words. A meter most might be familiar with would be the iambic pentameter, heard in the works of William Shakespeare.
By Jove, I am not covetous for gold. It yearns me not if men my garments wear. Such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive.
And those with more modern sensibilities might find meter in the flows of various rappers. The Greeks, however, wrote their poetry in a variety of meters, among the more popular being dactylic hexameter for epics and iambic trimeter for tragedies. Yet even the title of poet and the designation of what was called a poem were flexible. Homer's immortal Iliad and Odyssey were considered works of poetry just as much as the comedies of Aristophanes, the bawdy satyr plays of Euripides, or the tragedies of Aeschylus. But ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle believed that the objective of portraying a plausible, universal truth held them all together. The structure of the story, its mimicry of the real world, and its ability to give its audience a sense of emotional release were the metrics that defined something as a poem. While the tradition of spoken poetry undoubtedly predated the written word in Greece, and had been widely taken up for recreation amongst their people, the poems we often think of as the first works of Western theater, like Agamemnon, Oedipus at Colonus, were originally performed at religious festivals like the Athenian Dionysia, a time of thanksgiving to the god Dionysus and the Athenian state, with effigies burnt, sacrifices performed, and hymns sung throughout the land.
And in the Festival of Dionysus, each of the three tragic playwrights would be competing against one another, and each would be sponsored by a rich man who would pay for the production simply for the glory of the state. And then a jury specially selected would vote on what they thought was the best play. If your team won, your name and the playwright would be inscribed on the wall in the theatre and you'd be remembered forever. There was no money, it was about glory.
The 4th and 5th century BCE in particular is often referred to as the heyday of classical Greek drama, with the formalization of these ceremonies and the prevalence of legendary playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides. While they also featured athletic and the aforementioned religious events, the poetry performances, open to all free citizens, would take place in purpose-built stone amphitheaters like those at Delphi or Epidaurus, with tiered seating built into nearby hillsides for better viewing, and perfect acoustics to amplify the voices of performers. The playing space itself was divided into several pieces, each with a designated purpose during the show. The orchestra, for instance, was a large circular or semicircular area below the primary stage, where the chorus would sing, dance, and act. The chorus themselves, an essential aspect of Greek drama, but more on them later. The playing area above, broadly referred to as the skena, began as a simple hut or tent for costume changes before evolving into a wooden and later stone structure designed to serve as a facade of whatever location the play took place in, and later, a secondary playing space. Even further on, they also featured 3 entrances and rotating wall panels emblazoned with paintings of the story's setting. Similarly, 2 ground-level entryways, referred to as the paradoi, allowed characters to appear on stage as if they were entering from outdoor locations. And that's not even touching the special effects. For instance, through the use of a state-of-the-art piece of technology, the mechane, the production's machinist could lift actors into the air, giving them the illusion of weightlessness in their portrayal of the gods. But all these effects were secondary to the performers themselves, most of whom made up the chorus, an ensemble of actors who spoke their poetic text to the beat of a drum or the playing of an instrument, delivering the text to the audience as a group or with each member taking charge for a moment.
But as for us, recruiters' refuse, too old to join the expedition, shriveled leafage left to wither, we go doddering about on sticks. Neither the nursling nor the senile have juice enough to serve the war god. War god fodder's prime manhood.
Their purpose would be to provide necessary dramatic information to the audience and to display the perspective of the everyday citizenry and social groups of the play, such as in Trojan Women, Oedipus, or Agamemnon.
So we don't just get Creon and Antigone fighting about whether there's a burial, we get the citizens of Thebes, the whole city actually, represented by those 12 citizens.
In Greek drama, the chorus is one and many, a shifting personality that acts as both narrator and external perspective on the action of the play.
It tries to make sense of what it's witnessing. They're deeply emotionally involved, and the suffering becomes a song. And the chorus as a group, and with its group response, sings its choral lyrics.
If you look at the speeches very closely, that there is argument within the chorus. The chorus says, maybe it's this thing, or maybe it's something else. This group is not one homogeneous mass, but that there are different opinions and different points of view and different responses to the action that's going on in the scene.
Their movement in particular, the songs they sang, and the dancing that accompanied it, would have served as what Aristotle called spectacle for their audience, not unlike the ensemble of a modern Broadway musical, where the individual melds in and out of group-based movement offset by our main performers. Music, especially, was and remains the guiding rhythm of the performance, the musician and actor working in concert with one another to relate the experience of their character. However, the first people to perform in these legendary festivals were not what we would think of as professional actors today, and the performance would bear little resemblance to the staging of a play in the modern era. For instance, Greek poets of the earlier 7th century BCE would often perform their works as themselves, the reading appearing as more of a speech or spoken word concert than a theatrical performance. But as more festivals came to pass, and poets adapted with each reading, philosopher Aristotle noted in his work Poetics that the standard style of recitation by a single performer had transitioned into the use of multiple performers, some imitating a single character.
When an actor began to enact rather than narrate, there's a kind of dangerousness about that the actor has to become a woman. The actor has to become a slave. The actor, perhaps even more dangerously, has to become a god.
A convention which, according to the philosopher, began with the works of Aeschylus and continues to the current day. Yet, the person traditionally dubbed the first actor in recorded history was not Aeschylus, nor Sophocles, but, speculatively, a man named Thespus, poet and singer of dithyrambs, or holy songs based on Greek mythology, hailing from the Greek district of Acharia. Little is known, and what known agreed upon when it comes to the life and upbringing of the first actor, and while the origins of his method remain wrapped in folklore, common belief states that Thespus was the first of the Greek poets to step out of the traditional choral style and go on stage in the likeness of his character, pretending to be them, and interacting with the other characters as if the story were taking place right before the audience's very eyes. A style that went on to be called Greek tragedy.
But in many ways, modern tragedy has actually changed from how ancient tragedy worked. For us, tragedy is a play with a sad ending, but for the ancient Greeks, tragedy was a play in which the events offered the audience a tough decision. What it does is face the audience with a problem. What would they do if they were in the same situation?
After winning the first known theatrical competition in Athens, it is speculated that he also went on to pioneer the concept of theatrical touring, traveling from location to location and performing in various locales to capitalize on his newfound reputation. Even without the lavish special effects and set pieces of Athens, Thespus and the poets of Greece still had one iconic tool of the theater at their disposal, regardless of venue: their masks. Often made of stiffened linen and designed in the likeness of their characters, they were made to sell the illusion of the actor's transformation and inform the audience of a character's appearance and personality.
And it's almost as if the mask is a kind of signal of the profession that protects the actor against the danger of doing these things.
Yet, despite what we do know, with few plays, fewer texts on theater, and no masks beyond those emblazoned on jars or works of art, it is difficult for us in the present to deduce how these plays may have been performed during their prime. But, once more, Aristotle, in his Poetics, gives us sparse pictures of how they may have been done in the advice he gives to aspiring poets, that the reader should act each moment of the scene with the very gestures of his personages, i.e., that good acting involves moving like your character, and that he who feels the emotions to be described will be the most convincing. Distress and anger, for instance, are portrayed most truthfully by one who is feeling them at the moment. Hence, it is that poetry demands a man with a special gift for it, or else one with a touch of madness in him. The former can easily assume the required mood, and the latter may actually be beside himself with emotion. Greek theater is often, and aptly, thought of as the birthplace of Western drama. Phrases like deus ex machina endure even to this day through popular culture. But unbeknownst to many in the ancient world, and even now, Europe had been late to the party. Because by the time that Greek drama had made its way onto the world stage, Theatrical traditions had been developing in Africa for generations.